everybody, this is Eve West. Thank you for tuning into my YouTube channel. This channel is dedicated to promoting a book I wrote. It's called Follow. It's an ebook. You can find it on Amazon.com under the Kindle's book tab. And my book deals with a holistic view of spirituality, looking at not just from a purely metaphysical standpoint like people typically look at spirituality, such as love and creativity and intuition and so forth, but I also focus on the earthly, which is the reptilian brain, in which you can see, taste, touch, smell, and hear. And so I explore various controversial topics such as race and money and sex, and how those are also aspects of our spirituality. I also look at the various constructs of the matrix that separate the conscious ego and the unconscious astral body. It's often referred to as Isis and Ra in Egyptian mythology, or Adam and Eve in Christian theology, or the ego and the astral and the New Age, and basically God and the devil, pretty much. And so the various constructs of the matrix actually divide us and make us into two people, such as media and entertainment, the things that we watch on television, our religions, what else? The governmental structure, education, the familial structure. Those are all parts of this false matrix environment that determine the false ego and the really the false unconscious astral self as well. And so I look at that, and I look at the elite that made this hellhole, basically for us, for the Jews. That's why they have us greet each other with hello. And I look at spirituality in terms of the microcosm of my life and the macrocosm of the world at large. And so in this particular video, I really want to focus on gang stalking. My past two videos have been focusing on gang stalking because when you wake up in the matrix, you start to vibrate differently. A lot of the information that you're acquiring information at a very rapid pace. You start to actually vibrate differently with the people around you. And so the people that are programmed to the matrix are designed really to crucify you, to point you out as a divergent. This kind of goes into Mark of the Beast symbology, if you will, in Christian theology. And it talks about how it's difficult for you to buy and sell in the garden, or buy and sell within society and so forth if you don't have the Mark of the Beast. And so this is really what, pretty much what it talks about. If you will, correlates a lot to Mark of the Beast. And so your programming that you got when you were younger will conflict with a lot of the knowledge that you are that you acquire as you're ascending. And what does that mean? Like for example, I was conditioned to be Christian, and I was taught that there's power in the name of Jesus. But if you if you do your research, the letter J didn't exist during the time that Jesus would have walked the earth. And so because of this, you learn that there's really no power in that name, because that wouldn't have been his name. And so things like this really cause crucifixion, especially when you've been groomed to believe that, there's power in the name of Jesus, and Jesus died for your sins. And then when you find out that you yourself are Jesus, and that represents something from a more occult standpoint, it creates a lot of negative louche energy that feeds the parasites that created this hellhole, if you will. And so, you just start to not fit in. And so that includes family and friends and so forth. That includes at your job and so forth as well. And I really want to talk about that in this particular video, because one of my first videos I dealt with how gang stalking is administered at your job. And so this is purposely done to attack your livelihood, because within the matrix environment, it is designed to push you onto the fringes of society. It's like you become a divergent and nobody really wants to be around you. And so it's like you don't fall into Christian, Muslim, or a Jew, being Jewish, or you don't fall into the mundane level of worrying about the superficial things like other people do, like going to basketball games and things like that, and football games, and going to see the latest movies and things like that. People who function at the basic reptilian brain, they focus on those things totally. But when you start to really ascend, you start to really acquire a lot of knowledge that helps you to decode those things that we consider to be entertainment. And so even when you go to the movies, if you will, you can decode and see and have insight into the movie, so you don't really see them and watch them in a very mundane type of way like other people do. And so when you give a lot of the knowledge and the research that you've done, people don't really gravitate, towards that. And so, at my job, I really experienced a lot of gang stalking. I want to talk about that here and give some validity to what I was talking about in my first video, where I talked about gang stalking and livelihood. At this particular job that I was at, when I started to really do a lot of occult, I guess I would say, research, and I got a lot of information about, just spirituality and so forth, I started to really just experience, a lot of, I would say, spiritual attacks. And I talk a lot about this in my ebook, Follow. There was one particular teacher at the school. He told me one day, and this was just out of the blue, he looked at me, he said, I can see your light all the way down the hall. And so I thought this was very strange, because I never really spoken to anyone about a lot of the light worker research that I was doing. In fact, I hadn't mentioned it to anyone at my job. But he mentioned this to me. He started telling me things that only God and I would know. And so I said to myself, that's strange. I thought he was a little creepy. And, but I tried to stay away from him. And I also got sexually harassed a lot during this year by a particular employee. But during this time, I was doing a spiritual doctrine. It's called A Course in Miracles. And A Course in Miracles actually drove me insane. It actually drove me insane. Because A Course in Miracles actually worked to really try to work to sever my mind altogether, to destroy my mind, because it creates what we would call psychological splits. And so this whole matrix environment is designed to create what I call a psychological split. Whereas you have two yous, your ego, your conscious ego, and your unconscious astral body. Like, for example, all of the 7 deadly sins are fused within our consciousness and cultivates a desire within our consciousness via the constructs of the matrix, particularly in media and entertainment. But we're shunned and we are demonized for partaking in these sins. And so that causes two yous. So what do I mean by that? Like, for example, our society says it's not good to be a whore. It's not good to be a whore, and if you're a whore, you're shunned for that. But everywhere you look, there's lust infused within your consciousness. When you listen to music, especially hip-hop, there's whoredom. If you look at television, it's all about sex. If you look at candy commercials, they infuse it with a lot of sex. Like, I saw an Easter commercial that was saying, the song "Let's Get It On." And this is Easter, a chocolate Easter bunny commercial. And so, in one instant, like you're told by maybe your family, your mother, or you're told by your religions that, it's not good to be a whore, but it's cultivated within your consciousness to be a whore. So this is a contradiction. This creates what we call a contradiction within your consciousness. And so you have the conscious ego that judges being a whore, but you have the unconscious mind that you go to sleep to at night when you shed your concept of the matrix and you're not a woman or man or rich or poor. You're nobody, really. And so you go to the astral realm at night when you leave the body, so to speak, and you work out your restrictions. And so, and it goes for all the 7 deadly sins. Gluttony, you're told that, if you're overweight, then you're ugly. And if you're overweight, that's the reason why you have certain health problems or whatever the case is. But everywhere you look, they're forcing food down your throat, especially in between your television programs. And, they are sending you, coupons in the mail for fast food all the time. You see these billboards, and when you go to the mall, they're always shoving samples down your throat. Eat here, eat there, what have you. And so this is actually putting a contradiction within your mind. And we tend to think that, we make choices within the matrix environment, and that this doesn't really affect us, but it does affect us. It affects us tremendously, because when you study brainwave frequencies, you actually understand that the brain encompasses everything. The brain encompasses everything. And so if I showed you something and then I took it away, and you couldn't recall it within a beta brainwave frequency of your ego, then I am God, because I showed you something that's in your head, but you can't get yourself into a theta brainwave frequency, or a frequency of, I guess what you would say, hypnosis or deep meditation to retrieve that information. And so, you know, that's pretty much what happens to us. So when you learn about brainwave frequencies, you learn that we do not own the mind, that the creator of this world does, and the creator of this world is satanic, as a satanic reptilian. And so, in learning this, I'm going back to, you know, the job that I was at when I first started to really observe a lot of occult practices and things like that, and really learn more about the occult and, you know, occult information. I started to experience, you know, gang stalking, being sexually harassed, and, you know, and various other types of mind torture as well. But when I was doing A Course in Miracles, like I said, it really worked to split my mind like the other constructs of the Matrix. For example, in A Course in Miracles, it tells you that God's Son is guiltless. However, A Course in Miracles makes you feel guilty throughout the entire doctrine. You know, it tells you in one instance that, you know, God orders your thought and that you're not responsible for thought. However, you know, at every turn it says you should have thought with the Holy Spirit, and you don't think with the Holy Spirit, and that's the reason why things did not go the way that they do, and the reason why your brother acts a certain way towards you is because you didn't think correctly. And so this is a contradiction. And so the Course is purposely designed to make you strive to do something that is impossible for you to do. And the Course in Miracles does not acknowledge the Matrix environment, and how pretty much the Matrix environment gives you a predisposition to have a split mind, if you will. So Course in Miracles says that it heals a split mind, but really it does the contrary. And so that's what makes the spiritual doctrine so particularly sadistic and insidious, as I should say. And so because I could not meet the mark, so to speak, and really adhere to you know, doing what A Course in Miracles advocated, although it facilitated an environment to do the opposite, I had a breakdown. I had a nervous breakdown. And one day at work, I just broke. And, you know, I had a whole bunch of sticky notes on my desk, because I would annotate the text often. I would do text annotations. And I would just, you know, I left this particular day. And, you know, I didn't report to work the next day, and my boss, you know, she noticed that I had left right after work, because I was not the type of teacher that would leave right after work. And so she, you know, I was told that she thought that this was strange. I think my sister told me, who's my emergency contact that she had contacted. She said that she thought that that was strange. And so the whole story is that she went to my apartment, and they let her into my apartment. And she spoke to the security officer at the apartment, who told her that I was having an issue with my ex-husband. And so that could have been the reason why I had went MIA, so to speak. And this actually frightened me, because till this day I do not know the security officer. And also, being tied to a secret society, I was always told to be super duper secretive. And so I would never talk to a stranger, especially about personal issues, especially pertaining to my ex-husband or any type of romantic relationship that I've had. And so, you know, this put me even more, when my sister told me that my principal had said these things to her, it put me even more into a perpetual state of fear, and knowing that these things were actually lies, blatant lies, and not true. And so after my, you know, after my sabbatical from work, because I took off about 3 months from work, and when I came back to work, my sexual harassment just went into overdrive. And there was an incident that culminated the whole, you know, I should say gang stalking at my job, because I had missed a meeting. And in missing this meeting, I got sent home for the rest of the year with pay, actually. I got sent home with pay. And I was being targeted because, you know, at the end of the year, well, actually in April, I want to say, maybe sometime in April, maybe even March, but I had got a recommendation to the new school that I was going to. And then at the end of the year, in March, I had got a really great, impeccable, an exemplary evaluation. And so, I really felt that I was going to leave this school in very good standing. And I was always taught to do a very good job and so forth and be very professional and yada, yada, yada. And so, but one day I missed a meeting. And I was never one to miss meetings. If I did miss a meeting, I would always give like an excuse or something like that. Like if I had a doctor's excuse, or my daughter had, or a doctor's visit, or if my daughter had a doctor's visit, or if I had a workshop or something, there was always a reason, if you will, why I would have missed a meeting. And so really I had a legitimate reason this time around as well. But it wasn't good enough for my principal. When I missed this meeting during a work day, the day before the meeting, we did not have the internet. And so because we did not have the internet was down at the job, I actually missed the meeting. I did not get a reminder. And so I suppose the teachers, the story is, because many people would go to, check their emails or whatever at home. But I had stopped doing that, especially after my nervous breakdown. I decided to devote more time to myself and not stay after school so late and so forth. And, when I was home, I was home. And so I didn't get the email that gave a reminder for this meeting. And the following day, I had a parent conference that following morning. And so I didn't get the email because, normally I check my email at the end of the day and I check it first thing in the morning. But because of that parent conference, I didn't check it. And so, when the meeting occurred and I wasn't there, my principal emailed me. So when I got back from lunch and I checked my email, I said, oh, that's odd. I thought we didn't have a meeting. And so she was like, where are you? So I came downstairs and the meeting had, already been over. And so I told her, I said, oh, I'm so sorry. I wasn't aware that we had a meeting. And she said, well, you should have been there pretty much because I sent an email. And by that time, even when I was talking to her, I hadn't seen the reminder email. I saw the email that she told me to, ask me, where are you? But I hadn't seen the email about the reminder. And so she was going to pull it up on her phone, but then she said she couldn't find it. When I actually got back to my desktop and checked the email reminder, it said, you will not get this email if you do not have internet access. And so that would have just kind of, destroyed the conversation right then and there, because it would give me an excuse to have missed the meeting. But she wanted to make it out like I missed the meeting because I wanted to, I suppose. I don't know. So, I had apologized to her in email before I came down. Actually, maybe not. Maybe I apologized to her in email after the meeting. I can't remember if it was before or after, but I had apologized to her in writing in the email. I had apologized to her face to face. I had, told her that anything that I missed in the meeting, that would be more than happy to make it up. But still, out of all of that, she was still upset. And so at that point, I just asked her if I could leave. I was like, can I leave now? Because I felt that as an employee, I had done everything that I knew how to do, especially given the circumstances, because, my whole 4 years there, despite not reporting to work the next day after my nervous breakdown, but really the whole 4 years I was there at that school, I was always a great employee. And so it made no rational sense whatsoever for her to, basically impose a judgment upon me that I had, was a horrible employee for missing this meeting. I didn't think that it was really a big deal. But whatever, given that I would have made everything up. And so, she, the next work day, she had brought in HR. She brought in HR. And HR was like, she had all of these accusations against me, from co-workers to, dealings I had with parents and so forth. And this was before the exemplary end of the year evaluation and the impeccable recommendation, and also a letter that she had written social services about how much better I was doing, how well I was doing at work since my breakdown. And so this made no sense to me. it really looked like a flat out lie and a flat out witch hunt. And you know, she made so what happened was, you know, in that meeting she had all these accusations, and so she said that, you know, she thought I didn't have a good rapport with the kids and that she would have to do an investigation. And so in the subsequent meeting, she talked about how I became angry in front of the kids and I ripped up a book and I threw the book on the desk. That's what the kids had said. And so when she brought the book to me, I told her, I said, you know, the book is coming apart at the spine, the book that I had on my desk. So you always have a teacher copy. And then the multiple pages that were in the book were multiple chapter 1s, because, you know, the books were old. I had them the whole 4 years I was there, and they were paperbacks. And so it was like normal wear and tear. And so the books that were coming apart, you know, after we had read that particular chapter that was coming out of the books, I took those chapters and put them on top of my desk just to kind of get them away from the kids, because they like to throw things everywhere. And, you know, but she accused me of, you know, potentially, you know, having like a negative, like a bad temper. That's what it is. Like, you know, you have a bad temper or something like that. And so trying to paint a picture of that. So in the subsequent meeting, before she sent me home for the rest of the year, there was no mention of the book whatsoever. She didn't say, you know what, some things came to light and I apologize for mentioning this. She just didn't mention anything about the book, although the book was a really big deal with the second meeting that we had. And so, you know, because she really had nothing to go on, she just sent me home for the rest of the year with pay. And really, in hindsight, you know, it wasn't that bad, because, you know, I felt, although I did a good job at work, I think it was a pretty good time, you know, for me to kind of take some time off and, you know, really focus on trying to get my daughter back and so forth. Because of my nervous breakdown, I had to give my my ex-husband temporary custody of my daughter. And so, you know, it was a really good time for me to kind of get my stuff together. But, you know, what I really want to do is just paint a picture of what happens to gang stalking individuals and how your livelihood is attacked. And so I really have been forced from 3 jobs. And so, you know, this is just evidence to really indicate, and actually to piggyback on my first video that I did about gang stalking and livelihood, to give you some sufficient evidence that this is what happened to me, that I was targeted, and I was targeted for no reason. There was nothing that I did at my job that warranted the type of treatment that I had gotten, and the fact that I had gotten this recommendation and this evaluation, and also a letter sent to social services since my breakdown to justify that I actually was doing a great job at work, really doesn't add up with the accusations that were made against me before these things were actually drawn up. And so I wanted to show you some of these documents. I wanted to show you some of these documents. So, for example, let's see if I can, let's see. So, right here, as you can see, what's circled, she circled that I got an exemplary. Right here, it says that I got an exemplary evaluation. And if you look here, it shows that this was done in March. So March 3rd, 2016. And like I said, again, it shows that I got an exemplary. You can see that. An exemplary evaluation. So this makes no sense. If you will, that, and she initialed it right there. So this makes no sense that for her to really target me and to say, oh, well, you know, we've got all these things against you that you've done, but oh, here's your exemplary end of the year evaluation. That doesn't add up. That doesn't make any sense. You know, 1 + 1 is 2, not 3. But, you know, clearly I was being targeted here. And then, like I said, with the letter that she gave Department of Social Services to suggest that I was doing a great job at work, I have that as well. And it reads here, it says, I am pleased to share with you that Miss West returned to work on January 5th, 2016, and her attendance has been good since that time. She has provided instruction for her students and performed all duties necessary to work here. And so that's what it says right here on this document. That's what it says. And so really, you know, this makes no common sense. I had to fold it up because I didn't want to, you know, put all of the names and numbers and things like that. But clearly, if I can get this with you being able to read it, that's what it says here. That's what it says. Or is that backwards? Maybe it's better. So it says right here that that is what, you know, that's what her take was at the end of the year. So there's really no excuse. And also, this was actually around the same time that I got the impeccable end of the year evaluation. Exemplary evaluation. It was March 2nd of 2016, that letter that I just showed you. So, you know, really guys, I was targeted. I was targeted, and there's really no excuse for it. You know, and one thing about gang stalking, it's very much made to look like the person is paranoid or a person is, you know, overreacting about something. But when you have documentation, it's good to show it, because gang stalking is intended to eventually institutionalize you. Institutionalize you, put you in some type of prison because your livelihood is attacked, right? So you've got to eat, you've got to sleep, things like that. You know, oftentimes targeted individuals become homeless. What is it? You know, they want to push you into some type of mental institution, if you will, because it's like, oh, that person's crazy. You know, they're really just reading into things. But when you are given an end of the year evaluation that is exemplary, and you are you know, you are given an impeccable recommendation to the new school that you go to, and you're given a letter of reference saying that you're a great employee, or that you're an employee that is doing your job, and then someone tells you all these accusations that supposedly happened beforehand, and this is why you're sent home early, and all of these accusations are made against you, then it looks really fishy. It looks really fishy from the point of view of the person that's actually doing this stuff. And so we are targeted. We are targeted, and it gives validity to the information that I put on my channel. The information, I think it does. I think that documentation like this and telling you my story gives validity that the knowledge that I share is something that is not supposed to be voiced. That, you know, that it actually nullifies the illusions, if you will, that uphold our false matrix society. So, you know, really that's what I want to talk about overall, just kind of give some evidence to support some of the gang stalking that I've gone through at my job, and also too within my home environment too. I'm going to give you a little bit more of that, and how gang stalking is all about debasing the pineal gland, which is connected to your emotions. And so much of the gang stalking that I receive within my dwelling provides a severe restriction. And so Saturn, the planet Saturn, or Satan in a devolved state, but Saturn governs your pineal gland, or your third eye. And so the more that you are restricted here, the more it exacerbates your emotional body. And so they make a case, that you're acting irrationally, and so they try to find a way to incarcerate you or put you into some type of mental institution because you're acting out. But gang stalking is a lot like poking an animal, like in a cage. Like you keep poking that animal and poking that animal and poking that animal, you know, eventually the animal's gonna bite you. And then when that animal lashes out, you say, that animal bit me. But really, all the while, in a very covert way, that animal was being targeted relentlessly, day in and day out, with so-called everyday things that on the surface look like you just had an argument with your mom, or you just had an argument or a bad experience at the store, or you just had a bad experience at this particular job, but really everything adds up to actually tick you off to the point where you just kind of lash out. So, you know, guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you in my next video.